Two poor brothers struggle to survive in Brooklyn, have to make a split-second decision: stop to help an injured man or make it to work on time. They choose to help and lose everything. Fired from their only jobs and desperate for money, they have no idea the man they saved is a billionaire. The streets of Brooklyn were still half asleep in the early morning haze. Dim streetlights flickered as two figures pedaled furiously down the cracked asphalt, their breath visible in the crisp air. Malik Carter, 18, and his younger brother Jordan, 15, rode side by side on their rusty old bicycles, the only things of value they truly owned. Their chains squeaked with every turn, and the battered frames rattled against every bump in the road. Malik's bike was missing its right handlebar grip, leaving exposed metal that sometimes dug into his palm. Jordan's bike, slightly smaller, had a loose chain that threatened to slip at any moment. "Damn, we're cutting it close," Jordan muttered, checking the cracked screen of his cheap phone. "Yeah. I know." Malik gritted his teeth, pedaling harder. They were both on their way to Frank's Market, the small, run-down grocery store where they worked 6 days a week. The pay was terrible, but it was the only job that had taken them both, and right now, they needed every penny. Their mother, Lisa Carter, had stopped working months ago after her heart condition worsened. Their 10-year-old sister, Mia, stayed home to take care of her. If Malik and Jordan lost their jobs, there would be no money for rent, food, or mom's medication. Being late wasn't an option. Frank, their mean-spirited boss, had zero tolerance for lateness. Just last week, a cashier was fired on the spot for showing up 5 minutes late. 5 minutes, Malik, Jordan reminded him. Frank's gonna fire us if we don't get there on time. Then stop talking and pedal. The wheels whirred, the wind biting at their faces as they sped down the nearly empty street. Malik's legs burned, but he kept going, and then dashed. Up ahead, something was wrong. A black Mercedes-Benz, sleek but damaged, was half buried in a ditch on the side of the road. Steam hissed from its hood, and the windshield was spider-webbed with cracks. Malik's heart skipped a beat. As they got closer, he saw it: a man lying on the ground. A middle-aged man, dressed in an expensive suit, covered in dirt and blood, lay motionless except for the weak movement of his hand. Malik skidded to a stop, his bike tires screeching against the pavement. Shit, Jordan hissed, pulling up beside him. The man on the ground barely lifted his head, his lips trembling as he whispered, "Help me." Jordan checked his phone again. 2 minutes until their shift. "Malik, we gotta go." "Are you serious right now?" Malik shot him a look. "The dude's dying." Jordan's jaw clenched, torn between two equally bad choices. If they helped, Frank would fire them on the spot. If they left, this man might die right here on the pavement. "We don't know him, Malik," Jordan reasoned. "For all we know, he's some rich asshole who got drunk and crashed his car." "So what?" Malik snapped. "That doesn't mean we just leave him here to die." The man groaned, his breath shallow. His leg was bent at a sickening angle, and blood trickled down his forehead. Malik gritted his teeth. "Screw the job." Before Jordan could protest, Malik tossed his bike to the ground and ran toward the man. "Yo, help me get him up." Jordan groaned, knowing there was no way out of this now. He dropped his bike next to Malik's and ran over. The man was heavy. Every time they tried to lift him, he groaned in agony. "Shit, we're gonna make it worse," Jordan panted. "We need a better way." Malik looked at the two bikes lying on the ground. "The frame," he muttered. "We can put him on top of the bikes and push him to the hospital." Jordan blinked. "That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You got a better idea?" Jordan didn't. Working fast, they grabbed both bikes, laying them on their sides and rolling the man onto the flattened frames like a makeshift stretcher. The moment they tried to push, he groaned in pain, his head lolling to the side. "We have to move, man," Malik said urgently. "Before he passes out." Jordan nodded, gripping the handlebars of one bike while Malik grabbed the other. With tremendous effort, they began pushing the bikes forward, the man jerking with every bump in the road. "Almost there, almost there," Malik muttered. The hospital was 4 blocks away, but it felt like miles. Their muscles burned, their backs ached, and their arms shook under the strain of holding up the man's weight. Jordan gritted his teeth, eyes locked on the hospital entrance in the distance. "You better survive, rich dude," he mumbled under his breath. Finally, After what felt like an eternity, they reached the emergency room doors. Help! Malik shouted, his throat raw from exhaustion. A group of nurses and orderlies ran out with a stretcher. What happened? One of them asked, kneeling beside the injured man. Car crash, Malik panted. We found him in a ditch. A nurse checked the man's pulse. You boys did the right thing, she said quickly, signaling the others to lift the man onto the stretcher. The automatic doors slid shut. And just like that, he was gone. Malik and Jordan stood there for a moment, panting, drenched in sweat. Then reality hit. Jordan checked the time. Malik. I know. They were 30 minutes late. Jordan wiped his forehead, frustration bubbling up. We just lost our damn jobs. Malik ran a hand through his hair, trying to push down the creeping dread in his chest. Let's go get fired. Jordan sighed, grabbing his bike and swinging his leg over the seat. I hope that guy was worth it. Malik looked back at the hospital doors one last time. Deep down, he knew he was. The morning rush was already in full swing when Malik and Jordan arrived at Frank's Market. They skidded to a stop outside the store, their bikes clattering against the brick wall as they practically jumped off, breathless and dripping in sweat. Through the large glass window, they could see customers shuffling through aisles, the dull hum of early morning chatter mixing with the beeping of the checkout scanners. Malik wiped his face, trying to catch his breath. Maybe he won't notice, Jordan said hopefully, still panting. Malik gave him a look. Frank notices everything. Jordan sighed, rubbing his temples. Damn it, man, we're so screwed. They exchanged a knowing glance. Then, without another word, pushed open the heavy door and stepped inside. The fluorescent lights buzzed a little too loud. The familiar stench of cheap cleaning products and old produce filled their nostrils. A couple of their co-workers glanced up as they entered. One shook his head sympathetically, another just looked away, not wanting to get involved. Then, from the back office, a voice boomed through the store. Carter Brothers. Malik and Jordan froze. A moment later, Frank Henderson emerged, a short, stocky man with thinning gray hair, his face already red with anger. His white button-up shirt was too tight, stretching over his belly, and a half-smoked cigarette dangled between his fingers, though he wasn't allowed to smoke inside. He stomped toward them, his heavy work boots thudding against the tile. You want to tell me, he growled, why the hell you're 30 minutes late? Malik opened his mouth, but before he could get a word out, I don't want to hear excuses, Frank cut him off, waving the cigarette in the air like a conductor's baton. I run a business, not a damn charity. Frank, we nope. Not interested. He pointed at them both, his face twisting in disgust. You're done. Get your asses out to my store. Jordan's face twisted in frustration. Are you serious? We just saved a guy's life. Frank barked out a laugh, loud and humorless. Oh, well, ain't that nice? Did that guy pay your wages? Jordan's jaw clenched. No, but... Then I don't care. You think hero points pay rent? Huh? He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a mocking whisper. Maybe next time you should mind your own damn business. Malik felt the anger boiling inside him, but he knew there was no point in arguing. Frank wasn't going to listen. This man didn't care about what was right or wrong, he only cared about his bottom line. So Malik exhaled slowly, keeping his voice steady. We'll grab our stuff and go. Frank smirked, clearly pleased with himself. Smart choice. Kid. Jordan, still fuming, muttered under his breath as they walked to the back room. Ashol. Let it go, Malik murmured, though his own fists were clenched tight. They reached their tiny employee lockers, grabbing the few belongings they had left: a half-empty bag of chips, a broken phone charger, and an old baseball cap Malik had worn on his first day. Ace they left. The other employees avoided eye contact. No one wanted to get involved. No one wanted to risk losing their own jobs. The moment they stepped outside, Jordan kicked his bike in frustration, making it rattle against the brick wall. I hate this place. Malik sighed, gripping the handlebars of his own bike. Yeah. Me too. But hatred didn't pay rent. And now they had no income. The time they got home, their legs were sore, their bodies aching from exhaustion. Their tiny apartment was as quiet as ever, except for the faint sound of Mia humming softly from the bedroom. Lisa, their mother, was sitting at the kitchen table, sorting through a pile of overdue bills, her frail hands shaking slightly. Malik and Jordan hesitated before stepping inside. Lisa looked up, her tired eyes scanning their faces. You're home early. Neither of them answered right away. Mia poked her head out from the bedroom, clutching her old stuffed rabbit. Did you get fired? She asked innocently. Jordan sighed heavily, rubbing his face. Yeah. Lisa's shoulders tensed, but she didn't say anything. Instead, she just let out a slow, quiet breath like someone who had expected the worst but still wished it hadn't happened. Malik set his bag down, pulling out a chair across from his mother. Mom. Lisa held up a hand. Don't. Her voice was soft, but firm. She closed her eyes for a moment, then pushed the bills aside. Tell me what happened. And so they did. They told her everything about the accident, the injured man, the rushed trip to the hospital. They told her how Frank didn't care, how he had kicked them out without a second thought. By the time they finished, Lisa just sat there, her fingers pressed against her temples. You did the right thing, she finally said. Jordan scoffed, leaning against the wall. Then why does it feel like we just made the dumbest decision of our lives? Lisa lifted her head, her gaze strong despite the exhaustion on her face. Because doing the right thing isn't always easy. Malak exhaled slowly, staring down at the table. Easy or not, it didn't change the reality of their situation. They had no jobs, no money, no backup plan. And bills didn't wait. That night, Malik lay awake, staring at the ceiling. His mind raced with possibilities, but none of them were good. They needed money fast. Jordan had already suggested it once, but now the thought whispered at the back of his mind like a devil on his shoulder. What if they took a job from the wrong kind of people? The streets weren't kind to kids like them. And if they weren't careful, they could lose a lot more than just their jobs. The next morning, Malak woke up to the sound of muffled coughing from the next room. His mother. He sat up quickly, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. The apartment was cold, the old heater barely working against the crisp Brooklyn air. Lisa's coughs grew rougher, deeper, like her lungs were fighting against her own body. Malik threw off his thin blanket and hurried to her room. Inside, Mia sat beside their mother on the bed, her small hands gripping Lisa's arm as she rubbed slow circles on her back. Lisa waved them off weakly, her face pale. I'm fine, she rasped. Just need my medicine. Malik's stomach twisted. They didn't have enough for her medicine. They didn't even have enough for next month's rent. Mia looked up at him, her big brown eyes full of worry. Mom's been coughing all night, she whispered. She says it's nothing. But it's not nothing, Malik muttered, his jaw clenching. Jordan walked into the room, rubbing his neck, looking just as drained as Malik felt. They exchanged a look. They needed money. Fast. Later that day, Malik and Jordan walked through their neighborhood, bikes rolling beside them. It was the same streets they had grown up on, but now everything felt heavier. The sidewalks were lined with trash, the air thick with the smell of fried food from a corner bodega. The local kids played basketball with a half-deflated ball, while older guys in hoodies stood in tight circles, exchanging quiet words and quick handshakes. Everyone was hustling. Because if you weren't, you got left behind. Jordan shoved his hands into his pockets, kicking a loose rock across the pavement. So what now? Malik didn't answer. They had already tried everything. No stores were hiring. No one wanted to take in two teenagers with no experience. And every honest job that did exist paid too little, too slow. Jordan stopped walking. We need money. Malik sighed. I know. Fast. Malik closed his eyes, already knowing where this was going. Jordan I know a guy. Malik's head snapped toward him. What guy? Jordan hesitated, then nodded toward a group of older teens across the street. Among them stood Trey, a 20-year-old with a reputation, one that wasn't good. Trey was the kind of guy who never had a real job, but always had money. The kind of guy that could get you what you needed if you were willing to take the risk. Jordan licked his lips. He said, if I ever needed extra cash. He had jobs for guys like us. Malik's stomach tightened. He already knew what kind of jobs Trey meant. Absolutely not. Jordan rolled his eyes. You don't even know what it is. I don't need to. Malik stepped closer, lowering his voice. I'm not going to let you get caught up in some street shit, Jordan. Jordan scoffed, shaking his head. We don't have a choice, Malik. Mom is sick, we got no money. And every legal job out here is either taken or pays like crap. Malik stayed silent, his fingers tightening around the handlebars of his bike. You really think we got time to wait for some safe job? Jordan continued. We're drowning, man. And you're acting like we can afford to be picky. Malik exhaled sharply, staring at the pavement. He hated this. Hated feeling powerless. But Jordan was right about one thing: they were running out of time. Malik's throat felt dry as he forced out his next words. What's the job? Jordan glanced around, making sure no one was listening. Just deliveries. Delivering what? Does it matter? Malik shot him a glare. Yes, it matters, Jordan. Jordan held up his hands. Look, it's just packages. No questions asked. In, out, cash in hand. Malik's stomach churned. That was how it started. Just small jobs. Just deliveries. Just easy money. And then. You got in too deep to walk away. Malik shook his head. No. Jordan's expression darkened. Then. What the hell do you want to do? Huh. Malik's mind raced. He didn't know. But he knew this wasn't the way. Just give me a day, he said finally. I'll figure something out. Jordan scoffed, but didn't push it. Whatever. Man. And with that, he grabbed his bike and rode off, leaving Malik standing there, fists clenched. That night, Malik sat at the kitchen table, tapping his fingers against the wood, lost in thought. He needed a plan. Because if he didn't come up with something soon, Jordan was going to make a decision they'd both regret. Suddenly, the apartment phone rang. Malik frowned. Nobody called them this late. He picked it up. Hello. A woman's voice answered, calm, professional. Is this Malik Carter? Malik sat up straighter. Yeah, who's this? My name is Eleanor Wallace. My husband, Benjamin Wallace, was brought into the hospital 2 nights ago. You and your brother, you saved his life. Malik's breath caught. The guy, the man from the accident. Jordan, who had just walked into the room, froze in the doorway. Wait. What? Malik ignored him, gripping the phone tighter. Is he okay? He's stable, Eleanor said. And he's been asking about you. Malik exchanged a wide-eyed look with Jordan. Listen, Malik, Eleanor continued. We've been trying to find you. We'd like to meet. In person. Malik's mind raced. This wasn't normal. Rich people didn't go out of their way to thank kids from the hood. But something in Eleanor's voice told him. This wasn't just about saying thank you. When? Malik asked slowly. Tomorrow. If you're available. Malik licked his lips. Something about this felt big. Yeah. He swallowed. We're available. And just like that, everything shifted. They had no idea that this meeting, this one moment, would change their lives forever. The next morning, Malik woke up feeling uneasy. For the first time in a long time, they weren't waking up to rush to work, to count how many dollars they had left, or to wonder if they'd have enough to last the week. Instead, they were waking up to meet a billionaire's wife. Jordan, sitting on the edge of his mattress, was fidgeting with his shoelaces, his knee bouncing up and down. This is a setup, he muttered. Gotta be. Maybe the guy died, and now they want to blame us. Malik shot him a look from across the room. He didn't die. She said he's stable. Then why do rich people want to meet us? Jordan scoffed. We're nobodies. Malik didn't answer. Because deep down, he was wondering the same thing. He pulled on his cleanest hoodie, which wasn't actually clean, just the least dirty. His jeans had a tear in the knee, but it wasn't fashionable. It was years of wear and tear. Jordan threw on a jacket 2 sizes too small, a hand-me-down from Malik that barely fit anymore. You think we should dress nicer? Malik asked. Jordan snorted. With what? Our imaginary suits? Point taken. They had nothing else. They walked out onto the cold Brooklyn streets, the familiar smell of fried food, trash, and cheap gasoline filling their lungs. The meeting place was at a high-end hotel downtown, the Belmont, one of the most luxurious spots in the city. We ain't getting in, Jordan muttered, as they pedaled toward the address. Ain't no way they letting 2 dusty kids from the hood step foot in there. We'll see, Malik said, though part of him agreed. By the time they reached the hotel, they felt completely out of place. Black SUVs with tinted windows lined the curb. The front of the building was polished stone and gold trim, the kind of place they'd only ever seen in movies. Jordan let out a low whistle. Yeah, we do not belong here. Before Malik could respond, a tall man in a suit stepped toward them. He had an earpiece, a sharp stare, and a build like he could break both their bikes in half. Malik and Jordan Carter. Malik nodded cautiously. The man didn't even blink. Follow me. No hello. No nice to meet you. Just straight to business. They ditched their bikes outside, heartbeats picking up as they followed the man through the grand entrance of the hotel. The inside was even more unreal: chandeliers the size of cars, velvet couches that looked softer than their own mattresses, and a faint scent of something expensive, maybe vanilla and cedar. Jesus, Jordan muttered. Rich people live like this? Malik elbowed him. Don't embarrass us. They were led into a private lounge on the top floor. The moment they walked in, a woman stood from a leather chair near the window. She was tall, elegant, dressed in a crisp white suit, with piercing brown eyes that studied them carefully. Eleanor Wallace. She looked nothing like Malik expected. She wasn't overly flashy, no big diamonds or fur coats, just simple, polished wealth. Malik and Jordan stood there awkwardly as she took them in, her expression unreadable. Then, finally she smiled. I'm so glad you came. Her voice was warm, yet commanding. Like she was used to being listened to. She gestured to the chairs in front of her. Please, sit. Jordan hesitated, but Malik took the lead, sitting down first. The moment they settled, a waiter appeared out of nowhere, placing glasses of water in front of them. You. Thanks, Jordan muttered, staring at the crystal clear water like it was something foreign. Eleanor leaned forward, folding her hands on the table. I won't take too much of your time, boys. But first, let me say this. You saved my husband's life, and for that I will always be grateful. Malik and Jordan exchanged a glance. How is he? Malik asked. He's recovering, Eleanor nodded. Still weak, but alive. And alive because of you too. Jordan rubbed the back of his neck. Look. We just did what anyone would have done. Eleanor tilted her head slightly. You really believe that? Malik hesitated. Because, honestly, no. Most people wouldn't have stopped. Most people would have kept riding, minding their business, pretending they didn't see anything. Eleanor must have noticed the shift in his expression, because she nodded. Exactly. She let the moment linger before continuing. That's why I wanted to meet you. Malik leaned forward slightly. Meet us. For what? Eleanor took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. I know about your situation. Your mother's illness. Losing your jobs. Your financial struggles. Jordan's eyes narrowed. How do you know all that? I had someone look into you. Jordan shifted uncomfortably in his seat. We didn't ask for that. No, you didn't, Eleanor agreed. But that doesn't change the fact that you need help. Malik's fingers tapped against his knee. And you want to help us? Eleanor nodded. Not out of pity, but because I believe you've earned it. There was something genuine in her tone. Like she wasn't just throwing money at them to make herself feel better. We want to cover your mother's medical expenses, she continued. We have the best doctors available. She can get the treatment she needs. No more struggling to afford medication. Jordan's mouth parted slightly, shocked. Wait, for real? For real? Malik's chest tightened. That alone would change everything. But Eleanor wasn't done. That's not all, she said. I know you both lost your jobs. I want to fix that too. Jordan raised an eyebrow. You're gonna hire us? Eleanor chuckled softly. Not exactly. She sat back, studying them again. I want to offer you something better. She let the words settle. Then, a fresh start. Malik's heartbeat picked up. Jordan shifted in his chair. What does that mean? Eleanor leaned forward, her eyes locked onto them. It means moving you and your family out of that neighborhood. It means education, opportunities, and real careers, so you'll never have to rely on jobs like Frank's Market again. Silence. Malik and Jordan just stared at her. This was unreal. You're serious, Malik murmured. Dead serious. Another pause. Then Jordan. What's the catch? Eleanor smiled. No catch. Just one rule. Malik lifted his chin. What is it? Eleanor's gaze turned firm. When the time comes, help someone else the way you helped my husband. The air in the room felt heavier. A choice. One that could change their entire future. Malik took a deep breath. And then, We're in. Malik and Jordan left the Belmont Hotel. In a daze. The city around them buzzed with life, honking taxis, distant subway rumbles, the occasional street vendor shouting about fresh hot dogs. But inside their heads, silence. A thick, heavy silence that clung to their thoughts like fog. Did that really just happen? Jordan muttered, gripping his bike handles like he needed something solid to hold onto. Malik still hadn't fully processed it either. Yeah, he exhaled. I think it did. They had walked into that meeting expecting a simple thank you, maybe a handshake, a free meal at best. Instead, they were walking out with a promise that could change their entire lives. Lisa's medical expenses, covered. A new place to live, arranged. Education, opportunities, things that had never been options before. Jordan suddenly let out a short, disbelieving laugh. Dude, what the hell do we even do now? Malik shook his head, gripping the handlebars of his bike. Go home and tell Mom. I guess. Jordan huffed, kicking at a loose rock on the pavement. She's not gonna believe us. Malik sighed. I barely believe it myself. Was happening. Whether they were ready for it or not. Back at their tiny Brooklyn apartment, Lisa sat at the kitchen table, the usual pile of unpaid bills spread out in front of her. Her frail hands gripped a pen tightly, as if just holding it together was taking all the strength she had left. Mia was on the floor beside her, playing with an old stuffed rabbit, the same one she'd had since she was a toddler. She looked up the moment Malik and Jordan stepped inside, noticing their expressions. What happened? She asked immediately. You guys look weird. Lisa looked up too, her tired eyes scanning their faces. Boys? Jordan shot Malik a look, silently saying, You do it. Malik inhaled deeply, then set his hands on the table. Mom, we need to talk. Lisa's eyebrows pulled together, concern flickering across her face. What is it? Another deep breath. Then, they told her everything. They told her about the Belmont Hotel, about Eleanor Wallace, about the life-changing offer she had made. They told her how, in the span of one conversation, they had gone from barely surviving to being given a lifeline they never expected. By the time they finished, Lisa just sat there. Frozen. Her hands trembled slightly, and for a long moment, she didn't say a word. Malik and Jordan exchanged a glance. Mom? Malik asked carefully. Lisa leaned back, pressing a hand against her chest, as if she needed to steady her breath. You're serious? Dead serious, Jordan said. We couldn't make this up, even if we tried. Lisa let out a slow, shaky exhale, her eyes glistening. They're going to pay for my treatment. Malik nodded. All of it. Lisa covered her mouth with her hand, her shoulders shaking slightly. For the first time in years, she didn't have to wonder if she'd be able to afford another month of medication. She didn't have to think about which bill to pay first, which one to ignore until the lights got cut off. She didn't have to feel like a burden to her own children. It was too much. Tea was everything. Oh, my babies, she whispered, reaching out to cup their faces. You saved that man's life, and now, she trailed off, shaking her head in disbelief. And now he's saving ours. 2 days later, it was time to leave. The morning air was filled with the sounds of cardboard boxes being taped shut, furniture scraping across the floor, and the low hum of an expensive-looking black SUV parked outside. Eleanor had sent movers, actual, professional movers, to pack up everything they had. Which wasn't much. Their entire life fit into a handful of boxes. Malik stood in the middle of the nearly empty apartment, staring at the peeling paint, the cracks in the ceiling, the uneven floorboards that creaked when you stepped in the wrong spot. This had been home. But it had also been struggle. Jordan dropped a box near the door and stretched his arms above his head. Damn, this is actually happening. Malik nodded slowly. Yeah, it is. Mia, bouncing with excitement, grabbed Malik's sleeve. Malik, do you think our new house will have a backyard? Malik smiled softly, ruffling her hair. I think it just might. Lisa sat in a chair near the door, watching it all happen with misty eyes. For the first time in years, she wasn't being forced to move out because of eviction notices or landlords banging on the door. She was leaving on her own terms. And she was leaving to something better. Their new home felt like another universe. It was a small but beautiful townhouse in a quiet neighborhood, a place where the sidewalks weren't cracked. The grass was actually green, and the air didn't smell like garbage or gasoline. The moment they stepped inside, Mia gasped. It's so big. Lisa's hands covered her mouth, her eyes flickering over the clean hardwood floors, the fresh white walls, the kitchen that actually had counter space. Jordan let out a low whistle. I ain't gonna lie, this is NIC. A voice behind them made them turn. It's yours now. They turned to see Eleanor Wallace, standing in the doorway, watching their reactions with a small, knowing smile. Malik stepped forward, shaking his head slightly. I still don't know how to thank you for all of this. Eleanor waved a hand. You already have. Lisa walked up slowly, her voice thick with emotion. Mrs. Wallace. Eleanor turned to her, and for a moment, it was just two mothers looking at each other, two women who understood what it meant to almost lose everything. Lisa reached for her hand, squeezing it tightly. Thank you. Eleanor smiled softly. Take care of yourself, Lisa. As she turned to leave, she paused by Malik and Jordan. This is a fresh start. Make the most of it. They nodded, understanding the weight of her words. This was more than a gift. It was a responsibility. And they weren't going to waste it. As Eleanor left, Malik exhaled, looking around their new home. Their new life. For the first time in forever, it felt like they could finally breathe. At first, the new house felt like a dream. The hot water actually worked. There was no mold creeping up the walls, and for the first time in years, they didn't have to worry about hearing gunshots at night or stepping over broken glass on the sidewalk. But the thing about new beginnings, they come with new challenges. And it didn't take long for Malik and Jordan to realize that just because they had escaped their old world, it didn't mean they belonged in this one. Malik and Jordan were enrolled in a new school, a prestigious academy in the heart of the city. Eleanor had pulled some serious strings to get them in. And from the moment they stepped onto the campus, they knew they weren't like the other students. The other kids wore designer shoes, carried MacBooks, and talked about summer vacations in Europe. Malik and Jordan, they still wore the same sneakers from last year, carried beat-up backpacks, and had spent their last summer struggling to afford rent. Yo, we stick out like a sore thumb, Jordan muttered as they walked into the building on their first day. Malik kept his head up, shoulders squared. Then we work twice as hard. Jordan scoffed. Work twice as hard just to be half as accepted. Yeah, sounds fun. He wasn't wrong. The teachers were polite, but distant. The students were curious, but not necessarily welcoming. The unspoken message was clear. You don't belong here. Jordan hated IT. Back in Brooklyn, he was confident, sharp, quick, witted. Here, he felt like a charity case. Like every time he walked into a room, people saw a kid who didn't deserve to be there. It didn't help that a group of rich kids had made it their personal mission to remind him. One afternoon, Malik walked into the cafeteria just in time to hear one of them, some blonde-haired kid in a Ralph Lauren sweater, muttering under his breath to his friends, I don't get why they even let them in. Like just because they saved some rich dude, they get a free ride. Jordan was across the room, sitting alone, his jaw clenched so tight Malik thought he might break a tooth. Malik sat down next to him, setting down his tray. Ignore them. Yeah, real easy for you to say, Jordan muttered. Malik studied him. You want to prove them wrong? Jordan finally looked up. How? Malik leaned in. You get your grades up. You beat them at their own game. Jordan let out a humorless laugh. Yeah. And then what? They suddenly respect us. Malik didn't answer right away. Because he didn't know. But he did know one thing: we didn't get this second chance just to throw it away. Jordan stared at him for a long moment. Then, finally, he sighed. Fine. But if I punch that dude in the face one day, you better bail me out. Malik chuckled. Deal. While Jordan struggled, Malik thrived. He studied harder than he ever had before, staying up late, taking notes, absorbing everything. He wasn't just trying to pass, he was trying to win. And soon, people started noticing. One teacher, Mr. Albright, pulled him aside after class. You've got potential, Malik. Ever thought about applying to Washington University? Malik hesitated. Washington. Like the expensive, Ivy-tier Washington. Mr. Albright smiled. That one. Malik swallowed. No one had ever looked at him and seen potential before. One evening, as Malik was heading home from school, he saw something that stopped him cold. Trey. The same Trey from the old neighborhood, the one who had tried to pull Jordan into the streets. Only now, Trey wasn't alone. He was talking to a group of young kids. No older than 13 or 14. Malik didn't need to hear the conversation to know what was happening. Trey was doing exactly what older guys had tried to do to him, and Jordan years ago. Recruiting. Tempting. Dragging kids into a life they wouldn't be able to escape. Malik's blood boiled. He crossed the street, stepping right into their conversation. Yo, Trey. Trey turned, raising an eyebrow. Well, if it ain't Mr. Too Good for the Block. Malik ignored the jab, his eyes locking onto the younger kids. Why all should go home. The kids hesitated. Trey grinned. Damn, Malik, you got soft. That fancy school got you feeling special? Malik didn't flinch. Nah. I just know how this story ends. Trey's grin faded. Oh yeah? Malik nodded. Yeah. Ends with handcuffs. Or a casket. Silence. The younger kids shifted uncomfortably. One, they started backing away. Trey watched them go, his jaw tight. Then, he looked back at Malik, shaking his head. You think you better than us, huh? Malik exhaled. Nah, man. I just think I got lucky. Another beat of silence. Then Trey chuckled darkly, shoving his hands into his pockets. Yeah. We'll see how long that luck lasts. He turned and walked away. Malik watched him go, his chest tight with frustration. Because he knew not everyone got out. And some people didn't want. Months passed. Lisa got the best treatment available, growing stronger every day. Jordan worked his ass off, finally feeling like he belonged. Malik got accepted to Washington University. Everything had changed. But one night, as Malik sat outside their house, staring up at the sky, he heard a voice behind him. You kept your promise. He turned. Eleanor Wallace stood at the edge of the porch, smiling softly. Malik blinked, confused. What do you mean? Eleanor stepped closer. The rule I gave you. That when the time came, you'd help someone else. Malik thought about the kids. The ones he had sent home. The ones he had stopped from making the same mistakes. And suddenly, he understood. I didn't even realize I was doing it. Eleanor chuckled. That's the best kind of promise to keep. Malik turned back to the sky, exhaling. He had spent so long fighting to survive, and now for the first time, he was living. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.